Since the early 1900s, Michigan has been branding itself as a premier travel destination. According to state archivist Mark Harvey, Michigan's first official slogans came around 1917 and included Playground of a Nation and Carefree Days in Michigan. A couple decades later, it was Michigan, Water Wonderland, soon followed by Winter Water Wonderland. But if you ask Michiganders of a certain age, they'll say this was peak Michigan.
Yes, Michigan. And it's like, how did this jingle stick in my little 8-year-old head forever?
When I came back to that song 5 or 10 years ago, it just instantly was this nostalgia.
It sounds like an 80s love ballad. It felt romantic in a way, like fall in love with your state.
And there's just something about being in Michigan, being from Michigan, that for me I'm proud to be a Michigander. And it is a feeling that's hard to capture in words, and it stays with you. And so the song and that line, for me, captures it.
Say yes to Michigan. These 1980s TV and radio ads were before my time, but once I heard the jingle, I could not unhear it. It just hits different. Sure, it has a bit of that 80s corniness to it, which I guess if you lived it, is just called nostalgia. But I've got to admit, it's an absolute earworm, and it now runs through my head every time I cross the Mackinac Bridge or catch a sunset on a Great Lakes beach. I'm Patrick Shea, lead podcast producer with MLive, and I want to make a show that celebrates everything Michigan, a series of audio postcards from the Great Lakes state. And as this jingle wormed its way into my brain forever, it started to feel like a must-have for the show. But first, I've got to make sure I can use it without getting sued. So, here we go. This is Yes, Michigan, an MLive production. Step 1. Track down the songwriters. I found an article on Michiganology.com that credits the song to Tom Anthony and Gavin Spencer. Despite obsessive Googling, I couldn't find either of them, anywhere. So, step 2. Reach out to Michigan Travel, the state's tourism agency. It was their ad, after all. I got an email back a couple days later. Hi Patrick, thank you for reaching out. This was well before my time, and anyone on our current team, so I don't have any additional info to share beyond what you have below. Let me look into this a bit and see what I can find out. I followed up a couple weeks later and got another reply. Hello, Patrick. We do not have records for the music at Travel Michigan. I found this via a quick online search. And then a link to that same article on Michiganology.com. Back to square one. Maybe I've got to change my approach. A friend who studied commercial music told me about something called ASCAP, the American Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers. It's a performing rights organization with a huge online database of songwriters. So, I searched Yes, Michigan, and nothing comes up. I try just Michigan, and hundreds of results appear. I scroll through page after page, and finally, there it is, the name I'm looking for, Thomas H. Anthony, and below it, a phone number with a Manhattan area code.
How are you, Patrick?
Good. How are you doing?
Good.
I don't get Tom Anthony on the phone, but I'm close.
I'm Stephanie Fuller Anthony. I'm Tom's wife. Yeah.
I was sad to hear that Tom had passed away last April, but his wife Stephanie, a former jingle singer, tells me more about the person behind the song. Tom enjoyed a long and successful career, writing jingles for Doublemint Gum, Coca-Cola, Cadillac, Chevrolet, Nabisco, and of course, Travel Michigan.
You know, Tom just wrote beautiful music. It was just really easy to fall into the music and the song, and he could absolutely capture the essence in a very short period of time. You only have at the most a minute
And in the space of 1 minute, just 60 seconds, a jingle writer has to capture a whole feeling, even if that feeling's forever.
Well, the feeling's forever. I mean, to me, that's like if you're trying to grab the essence of that place and heartstrings of people who love that place for what it is. You know, it's not like California. It's a completely different feeling. You know, so every place that you're writing about is going to, you know, he was just great at that.
Yeah.
Both lyrically and musically, you know.
You know, all these other places, the feeling's temporary, right? But then Michigan's forever.
Yeah, there you go.
Stephanie is the closest I've gotten to this elusive jingle. And I'll admit, it feels kind of strange putting so much time into tracking it down. But apparently, this isn't the first call Stephanie's gotten like this.
Somebody went to great lengths one time to try to get a hold of and find out who did this song, and they wanted to know if they could get a copy for it for their wedding. I mean, like that. And it was a commercial. You know.
There's just something about it. The fretless bass, the passion, and Michigan singing in the first person. It's kind of strange, but I don't know. It just works.
Seasons past and yet to be, each brings something new to me, to Michigan.
I don't know if you agree, but the thought I keep having is a jingle has no business being this good. And at the end of our call, Stephanie pointed me even closer to its source.
And tell Gavin when you talk to him I said hi.
All right, will do. Thanks, Stephanie.
We only live 20 blocks away from each other.
The idea that there should be some interest in a piece of music that's, 40 years old? And a piece of advertising music that's 40 years old is a little surprising, but very gratifying. That was my first thought.
That's Gavin Spencer, Tom's business partner and co-writer of the Yes, Michigan song. He moved to New York from London in the 1970s in hopes of becoming a rock star. But when the band broke up, he was looking for work. Scuffling, as he calls it.
You know, I was scuffling around trying to make a living doing music. I had a writing partner who was an actor on Sesame Street. We made a couple of albums for Sesame Street, musical odd jobs, writing lead sheets, scuffling. And then I was working for a music production company called Love Zager, writing songs, still trying to do that. And they mentioned to me that they knew a guy called Tom Anthony who was pretty successful in the ad music business, and his assistant had just left him, and he was always moaning and complaining because he had too much work, and he didn't get any time off on the weekends and all this kind of stuff. And they knew that I was interested in it. So they said, why don't you should meet this guy. So there was a music business hangout called the Possible 20, a bar on, I think it was 55th or 54th Street, where people would go after work. So I went there and made it my business to know Tom Anthony. So I kind of befriended him, on purpose.
And it worked. Tom and Gavin hit it off and went on to work together for many, many years.
We used to sit on opposite sides of the same desk and just throw ideas at each other. For me, what was special about Tom was, in addition to being a good melody writer, he was a fabulous lyricist, absolutely great. And for me, that was perfect, because lyrics just, I just can't do them. I wish I could, but I can't.
Gavin and Tom wrote a lot of jingles together. So when I reached out about the Yes, Michigan song, he went on his own search to jog his memory.
After you called, I did a YouTube search because I do remember the piece, but I couldn't remember it all that well. So I went looking for it. Yes, and there's a 3-minute and 20-second version, which I had no recollection that we had done that. But it's nice. It's very nice.
It's very nice. I mean, how could you kind of, from a musical perspective, I guess, a songwriting perspective, do you remember anything about that song and maybe what you were going for as far as a feel of the song?
Yes, I do, actually, because, listening to it has jogged my memory. At around that time, there was a big hit record out by a guy called Chris Cross called Sailing. I don't know if you remember it or not. Sailing, no. Take me away to where I'm going. I don't know if you remember. But one of the things that I liked about that record was a very prominent guitar riff. which kind of set the tone of the piece. And I'm a guitar player. You know, Tom played trumpet and piano. Of the two of us, I was the guitar guy. And it's not all that prominent in the final thing, but there's a guitar lick, a picked guitar lick going on underneath the whole song, and it sort of started there. You know, I started with this lick.
Where great lakes stretch forevermore and rivers flow and rivers fall, memories beckon.
Which to me, you know, I was being inspired by the crisscross sailing thing, and that's where it began.
Yes, Michigan, the feelings forever. Yes, Michigan.
What do you think that's trying to capture, the line, the feelings forever?
Well, obviously, they're telling us that Michigan is a lovely place and you will feel great if you are in Michigan. And here are the reasons why. And that great feeling that Michigan gives you will last forever.
And do you have any personal connection to Michigan at all?
None. I've never been there, I don't think. Well, wait a minute. What are the big cities in Michigan?
You've got Detroit. You've got
that one I know about.
Grand Rapids.
No, never been there.
Saginaw. Yeah.
And yet, this jingle writer, born in London, living in Manhattan, helped write a song that's still near and dear to so many folks in Michigan after all these years.
I read all the comments underneath the 3-minute version on YouTube, and they were all very nice. You know, usually on the internet, you expect somebody to say, "This is the worst piece of music I ever heard. I can't believe that you're still talking about it." But nobody said anything like that.
I think I read one comment that said, "I could be Pied Pipered away by this song," which I thought was really funny.
It's lovely that people still enjoy it and like it. It's great.
The song's lasting legacy is due in part to Tom and Gavin's great songwriting, of course, but it's also a reflection of how Michiganders feel about their state. People are proud to be from Michigan, and I think it has to do with our geography. With more than 3,000 miles of shoreline, Alaska is the only state that boasts more. If you're in Michigan, you're never more than 85 miles from a Great Lakes beach. Maybe it's because of that isolation, the natural moat of these Great Lakes, that Michiganders have developed such a strong sense of state pride. We're insular, or peninsular.
We're not a drive-through state. You know, if you're driving in Michigan, it's because you came to Michigan.
That's Mark Lance. He works in advertising and is behind the most successful tourism ad campaign in Michigan's history.
It's not a drive-through state. It's a drive-to state. And so a lot of the things that sprout up around, state to state, interstates, haven't necessarily come to places like up north or the western side of Michigan or the Thumb, or certainly not the Upper Peninsula, which still have a lot of the character it had, many, many, many years ago, generations ago.
Mark kept that in mind when he pitched a campaign to Travel Michigan, the state's tourism department.
We looked at other state tourism campaigns over the years, and there were like two that really, really stood out historically. There was I Love New York, and then there was Virginia's for Lovers, which have been platforms that have been around for 30 plus years. And we were like, if we're going to do something, let's really swing for the fences and come up with something that could last for 30 years.
What they came up with was Find Your True North. Not just directional north, Mark says, but mental, emotional north. It was all about returning to what's real and good in the world. Rediscovery in Michigan. They made a short, rough draft video ad and brought it to a meeting with Travel Michigan. This was back in 2006.
And people were literally crying in the meeting, and which is one of the few times that crying is good. It means you've really moved them.
Mark was working with McCann Advertising at the time, and based on that room's reaction, it's no surprise that their pitch won. But Travel Michigan did have some edits.
They said, well, one thing we got to do is we got to get rid of that line.
That line being, Find Your True North.
And we were like, we like that line, and they go, oh, we like it too, but we got to get rid of it.
The problem was, Travel Michigan felt it sounded too much like a campaign just for up north, and that folks downstate, especially in the tourism industry, would feel left out.
And so we ended up kicking it around the table a few times and made the observation, one of the defining features of Michigan clearly is water. maybe we want to focus on water and boating. And my response to that was, yes, water is very important, but if you don't boat then, you don't fish, then why would you come here? On the other hand, water stands for, it's like cleansing. It's kind of spiritual rebirth. It's a symbol of purity. The conversation continued along, and I thought about that, and I wrote down on my pad, Pure Michigan. After that meeting, I took my little notepad back and I went to my computer and I Googled the phrase Pure Michigan in quotes to see what came up. And there were like 80 hits and it was like 100% pure Michigan honey, that kind of stuff, or 100% pure Michigan maple syrup, or one Ohio State fan saying, that's pure Michigan bullshit. And responding to whatever the controversy of that past season was. And so it was not a thing. Yeah. And now here we are 18 years later, and
it's everywhere. Roadside billboards, welcome signs, license plates, t-shirts, bumper stickers, and of course, commercials featuring the smooth, resonant baritone of Michigan's own Buzz Lightyear.
Welcome to harvest time, when Mother Nature puts on a whole new wardrobe, and we look at life in a whole new way. So pull out that favorite sweater and grab yourself a little piece of pure Michigan.
But before the Tim Allen voiceovers and the classy blue font came more than a century of slogans and campaigns. Like I mentioned at the top, Playground of a Nation, Carefree Days in Michigan, Water Winter Wonderland. In the 1970s, it was the Almost Islands of the Great Lakes, the first slogan aimed specifically at promoting both peninsulas. But of all those slogans, that 1980s jingle was among the most short-lived. The campaign just ran a few years, and yet it stuck around in the Michigan psyche. After speaking with Mark Lance, who came up with Pure Michigan, I think the Feelings Forever was going for something similar.
And that was really what that campaign was always about. Don't just list the things you can do. Talk about what it feels like to be here. And if you make people feel that, if they get that feeling and it's good, they're going to want more of it. And the way to get more of it is to come here.
In the coming weeks, we'll be diving into that feeling, the people, places, and history that make Michigan like nowhere else. We'll hear from a long-distance swimmer who's crossed all 5 Great Lakes. We'll get ready for Halloween with the Dog Man, Michigan's own cryptid creature. We'll hear how a piece of the Mackinac Bridge got to the South Pole and tell the true story of the pirates of the inland seas. All that and more coming up on Yes, Michigan. It's a series that might last just a few months. But the feeling, well, you know. Yes, Michigan is an MLive production. The pilot was written and produced by me, Patrick Shea, and edited by Jillian Van Straat. Music for this episode by Jason Shaw, Lofium, Charlie Lewis, and of course, Tom Anthony and Gavin Spencer. Special thanks to Mark Egan, CJ Shaitanya, Mark Harvey, and Travel Michigan for their help with this episode. You can read more stories from all around the Great Lakes State at our website, mlive.com. Thanks for listening.